We're live. I'm right here with Dominik Di Filippo, freshman offensive lineman with Harvard University. Super cool to have you on. You have a great story. I'm just looking to see, where you're at. I think you're a testament to the good things that football can do, right? And this
Right.
is what this podcast is really about. So how are you, Dominik? How's family?
I'm good. Everything's well here. Just finished up the holidays with the family and everyone's good. So now slowly starting to wrap up, hitting up the gym and then getting ready to go back to Harvard soon.
Okay, perfect. And how was it during the holiday? Do you have a big family, or it was more relaxed at home, cozy?
I'd say so. Typically over the years, we didn't really have that big of a family. It's kind of like just like, me, my parents, grandparents type of thing. But like, this year, since it's my first year of college and I haven't been home for like 3 months, my parents really wanted to like go all out. So, we got cousins and, my girlfriend and all that. So we had probably about 15 people. Yeah. This year. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool
Yeah.
stuff. And before we get into all the football stuff, I'm just curious to know, who is Dominik Di Filippo? Let's say outside of football, who is that guy? If I asked your mother, what would she say?
Oh, well, if you were to ask my mom who I am outside the field, I'd say she'd say that I'm a very, charismatic man, funny, jokingly, kind-hearted, gives 100% not only on the field but in everything else he does. And yeah, I think that's what my mom would say.
Really cool. And obviously you fell in love with the game of football. You pursued that 100%. It kind of led you to where you are today. But before football, have you started out playing any other sports growing up, or it was love at first sight and that's where it all started for you?
Yeah, so it was actually funny. So my story's kind of different from other kids. So growing up, my mom and dad never really wanted me to do any contact sports. So growing up, it was, like every other route, soccer, and then I did swimming. And then my dad used to play because like no one in my family is really athletic. It's kind of more my dad who just, played a little bit of juniors for hockey, but that's pretty much it.
Okay.
So my dad wanted me to test out hockey, but, I was, I'd say too big for the average hockey player at my age. So I wasn't able, to keep up, and I wasn't really liking it. So I just pretty much stuck towards like swimming and soccer. And then I remember one day I was at school. This was like, I think grade 5 or 6. I was still in elementary school. And one of my friends was like, Dom, you should go check out the what do you call them, football. And it was happening at, I think down the street or something. And it was Alexander Park. So, shout out to Alexander Park. And so I was like, okay, so I'll give it a try. But my mom wasn't really too keen on it, obviously, because, she didn't want me to get concussions or injuries and stuff like that. So I asked my mom, I was like, let's just go out and see how it is. So she brought me down there at the day of at night. And as soon as I walked on the field, I remember my Coach Wayne, like as soon as I walked on the field, I was like about a minute or two late. And he started like screaming, like run over here, hurry up right now. And like my mom was like, oh, you better go. So I started running. And then I remember we did a lot of cardio and we did a lot of sprints and position stuff. And then the coaches loved me because obviously I was a bigger kid. I just didn't know how to play football, but they developed me. And then lo and behold, that's when I started my first year. So that was about 11 years, because this next year I'm about to hit 11 years of playing football. So it was, I was around 9 years old when I started.
Wow.
So that's my story of how I started football. And then along the way, I just kept doing football, and then, picked up a few sports here and there, did some like lacrosse, did some track and field throwing, but that's pretty much it. I've just been football all the way.
Cool. Have you ever heard of Amit Paul? Does that name ring a bell to you?
He actually, he used to play on the Alouettes, and he came to my elementary school and speak one time. So that's where I remember him from.
I think he's a good friend of mine. He started playing football, I believe, at Alexander Park also. And at one point, he actually led the NCAA in sacks in Division 1. Yeah, while he was playing at Wolford College, a FCS school. So there's definitely talent that came out of Alexander Park or
Yeah.
North Shore, the West Island,
Sure.
Montreal, just generally. All right,
Yeah.
so cool. So you kind of went, you touched a lot of different things, and then it led you to football, and then
Exactly.
obviously step by step you grew into it. Then I believe you played North Shore Lions, and then you went to the Mustangs after that. Okay.
Yeah. So I did 5 years at Alexander, 2 years at Lions, and then I did 1 year at the Mustangs, which was the COVID year. So I only played 4 games, and then that's when I went to the US.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk to us a little bit about your time with the Lions, with the Lions.
Yeah. So coming from Alexander Park, I had already known because I was pretty close with at the time my head coach was Coach Terry, Terry White. And so I was pretty good friends with him. My dad knew him. So I already had like a good foundation with them and bond with them. So like going in wasn't really that hard for me socially, but obviously physically was much different than Alexander Park. I remember like Coach Terry didn't mess around. Like he was a super nice coach off the field, but when it came on the field, it was like, get to work, like do this, do this, do this, and like, don't mess around type thing. So my transition to the Lions was a little tough because, we would run sprints and suicides and really, put out to like that kind of work yet. And so I also had to start getting into the gym because I wasn't really training as much when I was with the Hurricanes at the time. And so honestly, though, my first year with the Lions was a little bit of like a stepping stone and learning what it is to be, a North Shore Lion and what it is to get to that level. As soon as my second year hit, I was kind of like in the groove already. I was like helping the other guys out, helping the younger kids out. I was like, I remember I was captain that year, and I was like, helping, the younger kids out and helping out the coaches with some drills and stuff like that. So my Lions was honestly really fun. I think that's my transition from Alexander to the Lions to the Mustangs. I feel like the Lions was like the key to what made me love football even more and made me want to pursue football as a career and, go to the States. That's what I feel like, because at Alexander Park was more of like a, go play football. It's fun, hang out with your friends. But like Lions was kind of like instill in me like that work ethic and say, what, this football thing I actually love, and now I want to keep pursuing it. So Lions definitely was, I'd say, the key to what made me who I am.
Nice. And what I find is cool in your journey also, especially at the Lions, is that everything didn't click right away for you. Like year 2 you were ready, but I think that's a testament to what a lot of athletes should be focusing on, is that sometimes it's not necessarily your time right now, but it doesn't mean you don't have the potential. It doesn't mean you cannot get to where you want to go ultimately, but you got to go through a certain process, and that's okay. It's part of it, right? And you lived it at a young age, which definitely gave you those tools to now, go forward. So that's really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, perfect. So now move on to the Mustangs. And again, you talked about the COVID years. I just interviewed recently Bradley Longa. He's at Baylor School also. He's a linebacker. And he just racked up a couple offers, and we were talking. And what really made him, get to the level he is right now is those COVID years. Because I know, as I was talking to a lot of athletes, some of them were going one way, some of them were going the other way, where it was easy when you love the game and when it's taking away from you to kind of feel down. And other guys just kind of, went all in. They decided to be that much more serious in school, that much more serious in their training. And it really gave them that stepping stone to get to the next level. So I'm curious to know, from your perspective, okay, during the COVID years, how did you approach it? What was your mindset? And obviously you left the game. I know you're serious about school. You're at Harvard, of course.
Yeah.
But how did you approach it all during that time?
So going into the COVID year, it was, I just finished up grade, I think it was grade 10. I was just finishing up going into grade 11. And same thing with the Lions, finished Lions going into my first year of Mustangs. And then I remember like that whole summer was like, after I finished my second year of Lions, that's where I started getting like attention. I was like, hey, Dom, like, I got some compliments, like from coaches and players, like, hey, Dom, you're good at what you do, keep going. You're going to strive, and you're gonna get to the US and you're gonna perform well. And then so I had this like vision in my mind, and like I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. I was like, I can't wait to keep putting that work in. And then all of a sudden that's when COVID happened, and I remember I'd gotten an invite to go to the Team Quebec camp, or I forgot it was Team Quebec or Team Canada, and it was completely shut down. So like that kind of hurt, because it was my last year to finally try out for the provincial team, and it was like completely shut down because of COVID. And I was all like, you're all bummed out, and plus you can't go to the gym because all the gyms were closed. So it was like, I was kind of like where I'd started, I went back to, I started back from square one. And it was like, I remember I talked to a lot of friends who were like, I don't think this football thing is for me. I got to, focus on school and stuff. My friends had left the sport. Whereas me, I was like, I still had that like, flair in the back of me. Right. And still wanted to keep going. And so I always found like little alternatives. Like if I couldn't go to the gym, I do home workouts, or, during quarantine, or if anything, I'll go to my friend's house and work out because he had like a little gym downstairs. So I do stuff like that, just to keep me, active and stuff like that. But, it definitely didn't compare to when, there was no COVID. And so I remember when I was talking to the Mustangs, we were having practices with masks on outside, obviously not inside because of, I forgot what it was, but it was all outside. And, so we would do practices, and then every week we'd see if like, oh, will there be games or will there not be games? And so we were kind of like working around it. And so I remember they had said, we do have our first game of the season, but there was like different protocols. Like you can't have a certain amount of kids. You can't go in the locker room. You can't have a certain amount of kids on the sideline. You have to be, spaced out. And so like, I'd say the COVID year of Mustangs was kind of like a bummer. Like mentally it was kind of hard. Physically, I just kept going. And obviously I wasn't getting the same results in the weight room as I was before COVID. But, I was trying my best, to keep active and keep doing what I was doing. And so I remember we played 4 games, and we were doing good. I think we were 3-1. We were like, it was us and the Greenfield Packers. Yeah. And it was, we were
not yet for the Green Bay Packers in a couple years.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we just kept going at it. And all of a sudden one day they were just like, it's completely shut down. We got to stop what we're doing. And I remember we just had to hand all of our equipment back in. And, we just had to go back home, and it was a bummer. Like I remember I'd gotten home and I was like, what am I going to do? Like I have so much free time on my hands. And because I think it hit like the colder phase, like the winter phase. And that's when like, this cases started to skyrocket. And so I was just at home. And then I remember one day, shout out to Alessandro Lorenzetti, who's at Michigan now. I remember I was really close with him, and I was asking him, I was like, Alessandro, like, what do I do now? Like, I'm at home, gyms are closed, curfews, no more football. And he goes, do you want to continue playing football? And I loved football. I like had a passion. I wanted to continue to pursue it. And I was like, yeah, I'll do anything just to like play football. And he goes, you should download Twitter. And that's when my whole phase of the US started in prep school. And so I downloaded Twitter and, just kept uploading videos of me outside working out, sprints, jumps, lifting weights and stuff like that. And that's what slowly started to grab the attention of, prep schools in the US. And then, if you want me to keep going on that, or if you want to fill in on what
I'd like to stay there just for a moment, okay? Because you said a really important word as you were starting. You talked about vision, how you had a vision. And that's something I talk to athletes or business owners all the time, where vision, to me, it's even more important than knowing how sometimes, right? Because a lot of people, they wanna hit a goal that they don't have, right? It starts with a vision. And when you have a vision, no matter what happens, you can hold on to that and you can keep moving forward. And the way ultimately appears, which happened to you, is because you were always moving, you were always trying something, building momentum, reaching out to people, asking for advice, and Alessandro gave you that advice, right? So now it kind of leads me to my next point, because from that, before that moment, did you ever even really thought about going to the US at that moment? Or did it really just materialize because of the circumstances?
So I'd say then there was kind of like a 50-50 type thing. So like, I'd say like so you said during COVID year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, during COVID year, it was kind of like, I always seen like, might sound cheesy, but I always look at YouTube and I'd see like those like US, like, NCAA schools like Clemson, Alabama. And like, I always wanted to do football. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, seeing that, and like I said, I always had that vision. I always wanted to keep going, but obviously when COVID year hit, it kind of like, I'd say lowered my, I don't know the word, but like, I don't know, my for whatever. Yeah, exactly. Expectations to go to the US. It was kind of like, I should just settle and, play a year in Canada and see where it goes. But then I remember like I said, I talked to Alessandro and he was like, you gotta keep going and you can't stop just because of like a little thing. And, although when things get hard and you face adversity, you just got to keep going. You know what I mean? You got to put your head down and keep going. And so, obviously a lot of people faced adversity during COVID and I was one of them. And, like I said, I did want to settle, and I originally committed to Vanier, and it was like I remember I posted it all over, and I was like just as a safe way, just in case I didn't go to the US. So I committed to Vanier, and I was like set in stone. I was kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna stay at Vanier 1-2 years, and maybe just stay the Canadian route. But then, like I said, Alessandro just kept saying, man, you got to keep going, you got to give it a try. And like I asked my parents about it, and they were like, hey, COVID with everything and, leaving the home and moving to a dorm in the States, we're not too keen on. But I remember like I'd asked them plenty of times. I'd done all my research, Twitter, posting, everything. And like, I was never just going to, because in my mind, I never wanted to do like the what ifs, what if I didn't try, or what if I didn't, reach out to this coach, or what if I didn't go to the US? Like, at least I wanted to try and give it my 100% until I couldn't anymore. So that's when I just kept going. That's when I started gravitating towards the US, and that's when I made it to a prep school.
Really cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
And what if obviously you learned a lot of things during that process. If there's one thing that stands out for you, what would that be? From that whole moment, that process.
Yeah. Like I said before, I think it would be just how to handle adversity. Like honestly, like when you're put into a situation where you can't do anything, like not because of you, just in general, because it's like things aren't just not going your way. Like, with shutting down the gyms and, not being able to play football, you can't sit there and just say like, okay, you just wait. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to keep going. You got to find different ways. You got to keep going until you can't no more. So like when some of my friends were just waiting until like the season started up again and stuff like that, I was, putting the work in the weight room, and I was reaching out to coaches on Twitter, posting, all that stuff. I just say like the thing I learned the most is just how to face adversity and how to, exceed those expectations and how to, stand above everything else. You know what I mean?
Love it. Love it. And it's great that you learned that, because I'd love to have your opinion on that. Okay. Here's my opinion on things is that we can always look to the future. Okay. A lot of people, having a vision allows you to see a future for you, which is great. And you definitely need that. A lot of people are kind of stuck in the past also, a lot, where, oh, this didn't work, or that person said this. But like, it's really important to fully live the present moment and fully take advantage of it, because it unlocks every other doors. And the thing about football is that you're right in it now, right? And it's a really special moment that will not last forever, as you know, right? But while you're in it, you're making the most out of it, which will unlock a lot of different doors. While a lot of athletes, I find, sometimes they always wait, but they don't really know why they're waiting. They're waiting because that person said to wait, or that person said it won't work, or but what if you tried? Whatever it is that your vision is, you just take action every single day. And that's really what you did, So I find, man, focusing on the present and whatever you can do at this point to find a way creates amazing things, which they have done for you,
Yeah.
Really cool.
1,000%.
Okay. So from there, doors open and you get to go to a prep school, right? So again, you grew up here. Obviously, there's great football here. You committed to Vanier College, but again, your mind was set on a different route, and those doors open from the actions that you took. Tell us a little bit about your experience there. What school you went to? How was the culture there? Leaving from home the first time? How's that whole experience?
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I started uploading it to Twitter and everything, and then I started getting, no, I wouldn't say offers, but coach started reaching out, right? Started saying, hey, Dominik, check this out, check that out. And so at first I didn't really know what a prep school was, because, you see like those Canadian players in the NCAA. And so in my mind, you think that they're taken straight from Canada and go straight to the college in the US. But I heard from not only Alessandro, but many other of my friends saying that like the prep school route is like the best route to go. And that's where you get the notice the most. So like for example, Baylor as well. And so I ended up, so like it was a long process. It was about a month or two. And then I ended up going to Williston, Northampton. And, just I ended up choosing solely because, academics, how the coaches treated me, and, the football program, right? And I looked at like who got recruited from there, how the coach is and stuff like that. So I ended up going to Williston. It was a prep school in Western Mass, a little quaint area, a little town. And so, moving in, like the whole summer, I was ecstatic because it's like, a local West Island kid going to, a prep school in the US to get noticed by colleges and stuff like that. And so it's a huge stepping stone compared to like, what the average, West Islander does. And so going there, I was ecstatic. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do good. Like I was good in Canada. I had this whole thing in my head. Like I'm going to be good in the US. I'm going to adapt well. I'm going to, I won't be homesick. Like I had this whole, and then, I remember moving in the first day. My parents dropped me off and they left, and then I was like, whoa, like what do I do now? And I was like, it's like you're in your dorm room and you're just like looking over there by myself, living in a dorm. And then I remember like that day there, we had moved in, and like an hour later we had to go down to the facility right away and start doing, like weight training, lifting, testing, go out on the field for our practice. And so that was one thing that was huge for the football side for me that I wasn't really ready for. And I'll be honest, and I could speak a lot about like, other kids at North Shore and stuff, is that we don't really have a fixed schedule. So like going to North Shore was like, you'd go there, like we have practice, and then you would train and do everything on your own time, wake up on your own time, go to class on your own time, or whatever like your classes were. And then you go to practice and come back home. Whereas when I went to Williston, the whole thing with prep schools, they want to instill what college will be like academically and athletically, right? So my coach wanted to instill what, athletics would be like at college. So as soon as I went down there, testing, then we had weight training, and then outside for practice, then go get lunch, and then an hour later we had to go back down for another practice. And it was like I'm running down, and I wasn't like, kids were going, and I was like running after them. I didn't know where to go. I was like looking at like like the map, and like I didn't know where to go. I was like, I found myself in a tailspin. And like honestly, I will be honest, like the first week or two of prep school was like the hardest 2 weeks of my life. Like just physically, mentally, morally, like everything was just like I was running all over the place, and I was like in a tailspin sometimes. And like then when school started, it was like, okay, pick your classes. Okay, but you have class at 8 in the morning, and then you have to class all the way until 3, and then you have to go to practice, and then lift, and then you got to go get dinner, and then you got to do homework, and then it's lights out by a certain time, and then you wake up the next day. And you know what I mean? It wasn't like when I was at home where I could wake up on my own time, go to class, and then choose when I want to go lift, and then go to practice. So like that was like what I'd say like time management was a big thing that was instilled in me going to prep school, not only athletics but academics as well. And then the challenge of academics as well was really what made me want to like challenge myself in taking harder classes. And what honestly got me noticed by Harvard was going there, like I had gone like talked about like from coaches and stuff like that about not only does football matter, but academics does as well. And so like a lot of my friends would be like, oh yeah, I'm good at football. I'm like, how you doing in school? School's not really. I was like, okay, but like when I was some of my coaches and stuff, they're like, make sure you have academics up there. So as hard as I pushed myself in football, just the same thing in the classroom. And so my first month or two were probably a little tough academically and athletically, especially with the competition, where I was like really humbled by like some kids. Like I had a few Division I commits on my team. And I remember my first play at offensive line, I was blown back by like an Ivy League commit. Right. And I wasn't really ready. And like, and so like, my first game wasn't really the best, but you know, I didn't let that stop me. I didn't, you know, like going back to what I was saying during COVID year, I didn't let that get to me and, you know, sit there and just contemplate and like, what do I do now? I just kept pushing. I kept going. I put my head down and just kept going after it. And then, and yeah, I just kept getting better and better and better.
Really cool. And that's the wake-up call I find a lot of Canadian athletes go through once they go down to the US. First, just the workload. The workload is different. Because again, it's not that you're not capable of doing it. It's just that it wasn't structured like that. And you weren't used to doing it at a young age, right? So the earlier you get accustomed to it, but the earlier you are just aware of it, the more you can prepare. You know, that's for sure. Definitely the workload. And in the end, like I said, you talked about time management. These things translate to everything, of course. But I remember even being in college, let's say just for workouts, and you're probably seeing a lot of that at Harvard, and you'll see it a lot more. But I remember even in our workouts, you can't cheat. I mean, if I go to the gym with my friends and we have 5 reps, I do 5 reps. But if I'm tired over there, there's the strength and conditioning director, this assistant, they're watching I mean, they're squeezing everything they can out of you. So just being used to that workload is definitely a big adjustment for sure.
Right.
Okay, cool. And obviously, the fact that you also always focus on academics is great, and big testament to your parents when it comes to that too, because it comes from like a family culture one way or another. Someone has to, you know, transfer these values to you. And I know the thing with a lot of athletes is that like when they fall in love with football is what matters, and that's it, right? So if you could talk to us about just the influence of your parents or anybody else, okay, just pushing you also on the academic side or showing you how important it is at a younger age, you know?
So yeah, no, both my parents, right, they were just they both went to high school. They didn't really go farther than that. So talking to both of my parents, they were kind of like, you know, going in, give 100% in everything you do, right? And they say stay humble, don't think you're all that. Just go in, do what you got to do and get out type thing. You know what I mean? And like, when I remember, like, I wasn't really like back in high school in Canada, I wasn't really like into like academics like that. I was kind of just like game days. I was just like, my head would just be like on the game. Like I really wasn't paying attention in class. I'd be like, okay, today's game day. Like I'm super excited for football and training. But my parents said, you know, like I said before, you don't want to have regrets, and you know, there's always going to have to be a plan B no matter what, right? And so going to, like, let's say, you know, God forbid I get an injury or I don't like football anymore, and I have a good degree, you know, it sets multiple paths up for me. And so, you know, not doing well in school and then only focusing on football, and then, you know, like I said, God forbid something happens, and then back up square one, and I got to figure out another way to go, right? So I figured, why not, like, although it might be hard, like, to balance academics and athletics, prep school and college, especially at Harvard as well, you just got to keep going. Like I said, you know what I mean? It's like, and when you're stuck or you need help, there's plenty of resources you can go to. Like sometimes, like if I feel like I'm down or like lacking something, I call my parents and they're just like, you got to keep going. You know what I mean? It's like a few more, you keep pushing until you can't anymore. And so like my parents have always been like that, always, like in every single thing I do, whether it be football, school, life in general, just, you know, keep going until you can't no more. And because the big thing is you don't want to have regrets, and you want to set yourself up for the best possibilities and opportunities.
Really cool. So from prep school, get recruited to go to Harvard. You just got done basically with your first semester, correct? Okay, first semester. Now you're about to go to winter conditioning. It's about to get real, Dominik. I'm telling you. Okay, those long months of waking up early, going to class with no games in sight, right? So it's but it's forging you for your next level. So, okay, talk to us about the journey from prep school to Harvard, and how did all of that went down, basically.
So after my first football year at prep school, I had done, so like I said at the beginning, I wasn't doing really well. And then as I started getting more of the hand and, you know, learning and stuff like that, towards the end of the year, I started doing really well, right? And so I started getting noticed, and my coach started saying, hey, we got some schools coming down and talk to you, you know, give it a go, and start talking to them. So I remember my first offer I had gotten was right after American Thanksgiving. It was Columbia University, and the coach was super nice. And he was like, you know, we like the way you played. We liked your highlight tape. You know, we figured we'd give you an offer. But, you know, the thing with the Ivy League is they give you an offer, but you still got to keep going in the classroom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'll help you in the admissions process, but they won't. It's not like a definite offer. Like if you were to get a full scholarship offer, to, for example, like Clemson or Alabama or Louisville, stuff like that. So I had gotten my first offer from Columbia, but then it was kind of like it kind of quieted all the way until towards the end of my first year, academic first year, towards like I'd say like March, April, something like that. And so I remember I just kept putting the work in the weight room, posting videos on Twitter, and I was always hungry. You know, I got that one offer, but I wasn't going to stick on that one offer. I wanted to keep getting more. I was hungry for more, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just kept going and going. And then I remember I had went down to a few visits to schools, and I went to UPenn, which is another Ivy League, and the coaches there loved me as well. And so I remember the coach had came to my school one day, I think it was like end of March, beginning of April, and he was like, Dom, we love your character. We love your highlight tape, everything. So, you know, we'll give you another offer. And so that's when I had 2 offers. And then going into the summer, I was kind of set in stone on UPenn because it kind of, like I said, I had gotten one, quieted down, got another one, and then right back to the quiet period, right? So I hadn't really was talking to a lot of schools and stuff. And then I remember I went down to the Bone Camp, which is the best of New England. And so, you know, 500 plus kids. It was a hot day. It was like 8 in the morning till like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. It was like a long day. And I remember I just kept going and going and working. Then I remember I talked to one of the coaches at Harvard, and he, at the end of the whole camp, he came up to me. He's like, Dom, we love you. We love the way you're, you know, offensive line work, you know, athletic ability, and we saw your grades and everything. So we would like to invite you to our camp, but you know, he goes, you got to come next week, because you know our spots are starting to fill up, and you got to hurry up and get back down here. So I was like, okay. So I went back up to Canada, came back down a week or 2 later, and went to the Harvard camp. And I remember like a lot of eyes were on me. Like all the coaches kept looking at me because like I was the guy who did good at the Bone camp. So they were like all looking at me. So I had to do good in the 40-yard, the 5-10-5, the L drill, broad, vert, you know, all that. And so, and the bench as well. And so I put the work in, and I just kept putting my head down, like I said, and I kept going. And then I remember I think it was towards the end of the camp, about an hour before it finished, I had gotten a call up to the office, and it was the head coach. He was like, Dom, come in this room. I want to give you a talk. And so I talked for about a good hour, an hour and a half with him and the offensive line coach. And then I'd gone, and they said, Dom, we'll take you, whatever it takes to get you here, and we'll give you your 3rd offer. And that's when I got my 3rd offer. And so, you know, obviously in the back of my mind, I was like speechless, you know, getting a Harvard offer. Like you see all the stuff on TV. It's like not only Division I, but it's Harvard University. It's like everyone speaks about Harvard this, Harvard that, you know what I mean? So going back home, I was like in shock and everything. And I kept thinking in the back of my head, like, do I want to keep going? Like going into my senior year, do I want to risk losing that spot, especially going to Harvard University? And that's when like the whole, like, I mean, I always had that plan B in the back of my head, but going into the US, I was like so keen on like, oh, I want to go to the best Division I school. I want to go Clemson, Alabama. I want to go like these big name schools, big football schools. But you know, going into the summer and speaking with my parents, and then speaking with like some coaches, they were like, football's never, you know, football's not always going to be there. You know, football ends after a certain period, and then you got your life after. And I'm thinking like, do I want to keep going? Do I want to see if I can get higher offers, or do I just, you know, take Harvard? You know what I mean? Like, and so I kept thinking about it to less than a month. And then I remember I'd come down to a final decision. I was like, you know, football will not always be there, and I want a plan B in life just in case football doesn't work out. And we're better than the best school in the world. So I remember I'd phoned up the coaches, family, and then I made my commitment to Harvard.
Really cool. I find there's so much stuff in that story and what you just told. Okay, the first thing I wanna address, and feel free to jump on, is that there's more than one road that leads to Rome ultimately, right? And Rome is not football. It's not the NFL. It's not the CFL. Rome is whatever you want for your life. You know, football can be part of that. Whether it's freedom, whether it's a family, whether it's making an impact. So you're setting yourself up to reach that Rome, right?
Yeah.
And football's part of it. And I think that's really cool. So that's the number one thing. Number two thing I like to address, and I really hope athletes are listening when it comes to that. Okay. So you went to that camp, you went back home. A week later, you had to go back, right? You had to go back. So you did the road work. And the thing about recruiting football in general is that, yes, people can watch your highlight tape on Twitter. Yes, they can talk to you over the phone, but there's nothing like shaking your hand, looking at you in the eyes, talking to you, seeing what you're about, seeing what your family is about, which is what they did. Before they offered you, they sat you down for an hour. You know, they talked, they knew athletically, they saw what they wanted to see, but then they sat you down for an hour. And that's something that athletes should not take for granted, because you're dealing with human beings. Yes, it's a business. Yes, it's their career, it's their job. But in order to build a good football team, you need talent, but you need character. You need leaders. You need everybody, right? So that's so important. So now I'm just curious to know, what is Rome ultimately for you? I know football's part of it, but what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so my Rome is honestly just having not to worry in life. You know what I mean? Having not like I said before, like the what ifs or the regrets, or saying like, you know what, if I didn't do this, like where would I be? Or it's like I'm trying to set myself up in the best position I can, right? Like I said, like if football doesn't end up working out, I got that degree in my back pocket. It opens up multiple jobs that, you know, not any person can get without a certain degree. And so having that Harvard degree at the end of the day will open me up to positions I would never even think of. And I just want to, you know, in my life, I want to go stress-free and no anxiety about what, like, you know, money problems or this problems or that problems. I just want to have, you know, a good as a life I can. And so that's my Rome. Is just it's my future, my family's future. It's that's my Rome. That would be
Really
my
cool.
Yeah.
Really cool, Dominic. And also, I find we look at Harvard in movies and things like that, but you never think it's real. Obviously, it's a real place, but I'm just telling any athletes, whether you're from Canada or anybody else, that's proof that it can be done. But there's work that comes into it, you know, and there's setbacks and all of that. So really cool. I have two more questions for you, Dominic. Okay. The first one is simple. If you were to talk to athletes back home, to athletes back home that love football the same way that you love football, that look to take their journey to the next level, but that are maybe focused on football a little bit too much, that they forget about the other stuff, you know, the academics, everything else. What would you tell them?
Personally, I'd say to them, I was in your shoes at one point. I was you at one point. And I had the same exact, you know, ideology. I had the same exact thing in my head, the end goal, just football, you know, football this, football that. But something I wouldn't want, like I would tell them, is what I've been saying this whole podcast, is just, you know, football is not always going to be a thing. Football is always going to be there whenever you want to play it and do it for fun. But at the end of the day, it can't be a career that you're going to live for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
So to them, I'd say, you know, have that passion for football, have, you know, the hunger, the grit, everything to do football. But at the end of the day, just make sure that you always need to have a plan B, no matter what, in anything you do. You know what I mean? Not everything is destined. Not everything will be there forever. You know what I mean? You always got to have a backup plan, just in case, you know, something happens or something else, you know, gives. So if I had to give them, you know, some advice, just always have that backup plan here in the back of your head. As much as, like, yeah, you know, you push it off and say, okay, yeah, but it's football first. I was like that. I know what it is to be like that, to feel like that, to think like that. But take advice from me, and that I've taken advice from plenty other people, family members, coaches. always have that backup plan just in case. So that's what I would tell them.
Great stuff. And if you wanted to see another athlete, football player specifically, that you know on the podcast that you think as a great story that can inspire other people and that you could help me have on the show, obviously, who would that be?
I'd for sure go one of my bestest friends who ended up coming to prep school with me my second year, and he was his first year, who's now at Old Dominion University, Joshua Schuttzman, another West Island kid like me, same thing, Montreal, same thing, prep school, and now he's at Division I. So if anything, I think he would be the right man to talk to.
Cool. And what I think it's cool also about this show right now is that often I see a lot of local kids, local athletes leave for school and they're kind of forgotten about, but they do amazing things. You know, they do amazing things wherever they're at. And obviously we got great football here that we want to celebrate. But man, if guys are just more aware of everything that's available for them and everything that's out there, I think it's great. So yeah, definitely I'd love to have him on. Thanks a lot for that. So this is it for today, Dominik. I have to tell you, honestly, I've known you for a little while. I've watched you from afar, and I'm very excited for you. I'm very proud. Actually, all the athletes that I bring in, it matters. And I'll say why is that I have little ones out here at home, little boys. They're not your ages yet. But when I look at that, I'm like, man, these are the type of people I would love to have my son watch, instead of other people. So you guys are making an impact. You guys are making a difference. I'm a big fan of you guys, and I wish you nothing but the best. So thanks a lot, man. We're proud of you. Keep going.
Thank you, Coach, and thank you for having me on this podcast and taking the time to talk with me today.
Perfect. So that's it for today. Champion Beyond the Huddle with Dominik Di Filippo, Harvard University. Go follow him. He does great things out there. Where can people follow you, actually?
Sorry?
Where can people follow you, Dominik?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, Dominik_Di Filippo. You can follow me on Twitter as well.
Perfect. So see you next time, and make sure to hit that subscribe button. Take care, guys.